Is it too early to say Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays? I feel like even though it's December and we've got Christmas music playing, we've got the decorations up, we have a tree and all that going on, I still think it's too early to say Merry Christmas. Is that just me? Or does anybody else feel the same way? I feel like that's just a me thing. But you know what? Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing fine and dandy. Today's video is about lighting. And if you've been in my Twitch streams and you've watched other videos of mine, you will know how important and how much I talk about lighting for videos, for live streams, and even for taking photos. In fact, it's so important I did a full dedicated video on different lighting setups and different kinds of lights you can buy, from the most affordable to the most expensive. I'll leave a link to that in the description and up here so you guys can check that out. They're making their first investment into their channel. They may be spending their first Twitch payout on this light, or maybe they're getting it as a gift for Christmas. And so I thought I would go over a few of the different ways that you can take that single light and get the most use out of it. We're going to look at different lighting setups and different lighting techniques that you guys can do with that single light to make your content look the best it can be. I'm also going to introduce a few lighting modifiers that I recommend to every streamer, every YouTuber, and indeed every photographer. If you're starting out doing photography or lighting or videos, you need these things in your kit. So with that said and done, let's first of all jump in and talk about the light that I would recommend if you guys are in the market for one. And the light is a single Viltrox VL200T bi-coloured LED light. Try saying that 10 times fast. I got this from Amazon for about £60, and it's a great LED panel light that I would actually recommend for a starting kit. You've got a pretty simple LED screen on the back that allows you to change the intensity and its color temperature, hence the bi-colored in its name. It accepts batteries and also has a DC power unit, which is great for a studio environment. It also comes with this very handy dandy remote that you can use to actually change the temperature and the intensity of the light from a distance. You can also group these lights into different kinds of things. So you can have one for streams and one for YouTube, and you can control all those groups from this remote, so it's very accessible if you want to put them in places you can't actually reach. I've left a link to the specific light down in the description below, so if you guys want to check that out. I'm also aware they do a smaller, cheaper version of the lights. So you guys want to check that out. I've also left a link to that in the description as well. And if you are looking for lighting recommendations, I highly suggest looking at LED panels more specifically, because they offer a lot of advantages that you can benefit from. LED panels are a lot more naturally diffused than other kinds of lights out there, and they don't output a lot of heat, so they won't leave you sweating when you're trying to film that video at 3 in the morning. Not like I've done that before. And there are ways to actually make this light a lot more diffused, and I'll go over those different techniques later on in the video. But let's move on to our first lighting setup and what you can do with that single light. As you can see from this footage, there is one single key light illuminating the left hand side of my face to create this kind of look. It's a very intense, dramatic look that works really, really well for talking head interviews if you're looking to deliver a serious message. And this is one of the main lighting setups that I recommend if you only have a single light, and it's called Rembrandt lighting. Rembrandt was an artist that creates this kind of look in his images, and you can identify this by looking for the small shadowy triangle that's underneath the nose and connects to the cheek. It's a style you see a lot in vintage movies like noir or movies with high contrast single point lighting. But let's move on and make a small change to this lighting setup and introduce what is called a modifier. A modifier is as simple as it sounds. It bends or modifies the light in a different way to create a different kind of effect. And the main modifier that I recommend picking up if you are using one light is what's called a reflector. A reflector is what's used to bounce light back into your scene and create a fill on the opposite side of the subject's face. See how this look changes the overall image? You can see here we have a shot without a reflector, and then in this shot we have one with a reflector, and you can see what it does to the overall look of the image. We fill in a lot of those darker contrasting shadows with a nice soft evenly lit fill. And with that simple change, we now essentially have a second lighting setup from just one light. You now have two different kinds of lighting situations that you can use in your videos, on your streams, or even in your photos. And to expand on the use of a reflector, you can actually use a reflector to create a diffusion panel for the light that you're using. Essentially, diffusion is a piece of paper or see-through fabric that creates a soft layer that the light passes through before it hits the subject's face. Now, you don't need to go out and buy a reflector specifically for this, even though I would recommend one. They are pretty inexpensive as they are. I have left a link to the one that I use down in the description below. But you can just simply use a large piece of white card or foam to create what's called a bounce card or bounce board to create the exact same thing a reflector does. And if you really want to go guerrilla filmmaking on this, you can paint one side with a kind of reflective paint or just glue some tin foil to the back of the reflector so you have one shiny side and one white side to create two different kinds of reflection. And to create that diffusion layer that I mentioned earlier, you can just get a single piece of white fabric like a bed sheet or a pillowcase to create that diffusion layer that the light can pass through to soften the intensity of the light. Right, that's one, well, technically two lighting setups if you count the reflector. They were pretty easy and quick to do. Let's move on to the next one. For this one, I actually have the light above the camera, and as you can see, it's pointing straight down. This kind of lighting is also another high contrast lighting style that has a lot of shadows involved. But let's see what happens when we bring in our reflector again and have it bouncing the light back up into our face. This one is called the Clamshell lighting style, and as you can see, having that reflector underneath the subject really fills in those shadows under the face. This is a pretty useful setup if you do a lot of fashion or a lot of makeup tutorials, or if you're doing a talking head interview and you want to please the talent by making them look a little more flattering to the camera. Bringing that reflector in creates a much more pleasant lighting look that really hides those imperfections in the skin by having a nice, soft, gentle fill. Now, moving on to our next lighting style. This one is a bit more of a stylistic look and appearance, but this time we're going to put the light behind the camera. As you can see from this setup, it's a lot more front-facing, a lot more direct, and it creates a really interesting fake ring light kind of look. It creates little highlights or what's called catch lights in your eyes, where your eyes are reflecting the light back into the camera. Very similar to cartoons or animations where you see the animators draw them in to make the eyes seem a lot more alive. It also creates a very interesting halo effect where you can see the shadow casting some fall off onto the background behind me. This one is a super simple lighting setup that doesn't require many, if any, modifiers to create this kind of look, and it's again very useful for fashion, for makeup, or if you're creating a very stylistic interview. And finally, our last setup is using what's called a kicker light and a reflector. In this shot, I have the light directly behind me, illuminating the side of my head and my hair. This in of itself is a very contrasty, very moody and dramatic look. But again, if we bring in our reflector to aim directly opposite the light and kick back some of the light we have, you can see it creates a different kind of style. The reflector is reflecting that light back into our face and creating a very nice, evenly lit shot that is very soft on the shadows. Now, this is a pretty unique style that I don't think many people would actually use inside of their videos. However, if you adjust the backlight just a little bit and tweak the reflector, I can see this being a very nice soft lighting setup that will look very appealing. And you can easily use these lighting setups in your live streams that are not specific to just YouTube videos. If you want to create some dynamic in your streams to make you pop from the frame, I recommend looking at some of these techniques. There are a lot of things that you can do with a single light. All it takes is a little bit of creativity. And there you go, those are some single lighting techniques and lighting setups that you guys can start doing right now to improve the production value of your YouTube videos and your live streams. And if you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see more content like this in the future, then be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That would mean a lot to me. And if you have any other questions you feel like you want to ask me directly, then feel free to jump into my Twitch chat. The link for my channel is down below. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and until next time, take care.